Welcome to the Toddcast, your weekly leadership nudge. My name is Todd Long, and thank you for listening this week. I heard 2 great squirrel stories. You might be asking, why did you hear 2 great squirrel stories? Because I ask this question sometimes as a warm-up question when I'm working with groups. It's not a question, but it's a statement. Tell a squirrel story. You'd be surprised the stories that come about. I heard 2 contrasting squirrel stories about commitments to squirrels. One, the gentleman in one of my workshops shared that he found a nest of baby squirrels and decided to take a couple of them and bring them into the house and raise them as pets. They would crawl around on his arm and sit on his shoulder and eat nuts. Ask him where they pooped. He said they just went back into their cage and pooped there. Interesting. Not my choice, but an interesting choice. And then in that same group of people that I was working with, another gentleman shared a story about how he liked to eat squirrels. He loved to go out and shoot them, bring them back, skin them, put them into a stew, and they're delicious. He recommends getting the ones in the woods, not in your neighborhood. There's some squirrel stories for you. We're continuing our series on the High 5 leadership framework, using our fingers as representations of 5 different leadership qualities, characteristics. And we looked at the thumb as recognition, the pointer finger is direction, the middle finger is reconciliation, and then we're looking at the ring finger as commitment. I did a couple of different episodes on commitments, on making commitments or changing commitments. And now I'm going to talk about constantly changing commitments. And what do you do with that as a leader? Let's make this happen. Welcome to the Toddcast, your weekly leadership nudge. Welcome to the Toddcast, great ideas you'll love. Recently, the airline industry has gotten a lot of bad rap and bad publicity in news articles. I've read more and more articles about airlines canceling flights. There's delays, all sorts of problems and issues in the transportation industry around flights. I decided to do a little bit of research to see how true this was. I looked back to the last 3 years, according to the U.S. Department of Transportation, and specifically the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, is that the cancel rate of airlines is somewhere between 1% and maximum of 3%. It ebbs and flows depending on the time of the year, weather conditions. And in the last 6 months, there's been no significant change in delays or cancellations of flights. I'd also say that Southwest, Alaska, and Delta show up as the best airlines that had the least amount of cancellations. Then I decided to look at what are the industries that actually miss commitments or have to continually change commitments. And not surprisingly, the construction industry showed up at the top of the list. Others that showed up at the top of the list were tech industry, manufacturing, and distribution. Boy, as I look at those industries, I think about that covers quite a bit of everything that we produce and do and make in our world. The construction industry, actually, it's estimated that over 50% of commitments aren't made and have to be changed. It's based on poor estimation, scope creep, design changes, coordination problems, supply chain issues. If you want to know historically what the longest building was to complete, it is the Cologne Cathedral. It started in 1248, and they didn't complete construction until 1880. Think about all the changes and commitments there. So here's the problem. Constantly changing commitments. Constantly changing commitments is a leadership problem that we need to be aware of and we need to solve. As I was thinking about this podcast, I was trying to decide, do I want to talk about this from a personal perspective or an organizational perspective? I decided to go from an organizational lens perspective because I feel like the principles and ideas can filter down to us individually if individually we are having issues and challenges, constantly changing commitments. These principles and ideas I think will still apply in that regard. I want to talk about the impact of constantly changing commitments, and then I want to look at what are some root causes to that. The impact is clear. It's the erosion of trust. People start to question if things will be done well, if things will be done on time, if things will be done in the way that you expect them to be done. People start questioning the commitments. That is the problem. And then it becomes ongoing, and that trust continues to erode and erode. Organizations, business start to lose their reputation, and then you start to lose clients, lose customers, and there's failure all around. The impact of this is the erosion of trust. Let me offer up to you the answer or the things we need to think about to solve this problem. And I would say it's starting with the root cause and identifying it. What is the root cause for constantly changing commitments? I'm going to offer 4 possible root causes: overcommitment or overpromises, unclear or changing priorities. That's number 2. Number 3 is external dependencies or influencers. And then number 4 is the lack of supportive, accountable leadership. Let's start with number 1, overcommitment or overpromises. Pretty much every organization that I work with, there's tension between sales and operations. Sales desire and motive is to sell as much as possible. Operations has to fulfill those sale orders and make that happen. Oftentimes, sales isn't aware of what operations is doing, and sometimes operations isn't aware of what sales is doing, so overcommitment or overpromises show up. That could be one root cause to this problem. The second, unclear or changing priorities. Organizations shift, and I get organizations have to shift to keep moving and keep the business functioning and keep growing as a business. And I also see organizations sometimes take these drastic shifts from one point to another, and resources are changed or people are moved to different places and different responsibilities, and it then becomes confusing and becomes unclear. I also worked with an organization for a number of years that they would get the new hot client. That's what I like to call it, the new hot client. And it was a big contract, and all the energy and focus started to go to that. They'd take people, time, money, resources, everything, and focus on this new big hot client at the detriment of the clients they were already serving. I would hear feedback from people who were working with current clients that lost resources, lost people, and lost support from leadership to continue to work with the clients that they had. So unclear or changing priorities is the second possible root cause. Third possible root cause is just external dependencies. People need resources, goods, materials from outside entities to help fulfill those commitments, and sometimes they can't get those resources in order to fulfill the commitments. So recognize that it might be an external factor that's causing the constantly changing commitments. If a builder needs bricks and they cannot get the bricks that they need in time to fulfill the commitment, then there is a breakdown in fulfilling the commitment. Fourth is the lack of supportive, accountable leadership. And this requires us to take a hard look at leaders in organizations to really challenge us as leaders and those particularly overseeing organizations to be able to be honest with themselves in terms of thinking about what are the commitments that are most important, how are we helping people to achieve those commitments so that we are not perceived in the industry or in our world as an organization that constantly changes commitments. That's a tough conversation to have and an important conversation to have. Those are 4 possible root causes. I'm sure there are other root causes. So the solution to this is, as leaders, we need to recognize if this is happening, if we are constantly changing commitments, to be able to stop and pause and bring the right people together to collaboratively think about what are those root causes that are causing this problem. And in that collaborative conversation, we can't blame, point fingers, come up with excuses, even avoid tough conversations. We have to have those conversations so you get at the root cause, so then you can find solutions to the problem. And once you've identified those solutions to that problem, find an opportunity to test it. It doesn't have to go across the entire organization. Maybe there's a one component that you can test to try to see if you can find some answers to the problem. Let's transition to the try it out section. Try it out section parallels what I just talked about. Here's your opportunity to reflect and think about the organization that you work in, or even yourself if you want to. Are you missing commitments or changing commitments constantly? I'm not talking about one here or there every once in a while, but are you doing it consistently or constantly? And then stopping, inviting the right people into the room to think about that and ask those tough questions so you get to the root cause of the problem. Find those solutions and then start making the changes. There's the try it out section. Here's your quote of the week. I'm going the humorous route this time. It's by Douglas Adams. He is the author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he wrote this: I love deadlines. I love the whooshing noise they make as they go by. Sit in that for a few minutes. Thank you so much for listening to the Toddcast, your weekly leadership nudge. If you feel compelled, share this with others. Give me a 5-star rating if you're compelled to do that as well. Next week, we're moving on to the pinky finger. The pinky finger represents consistency. We'll talk about that. I pray for order in your life. You have deep awareness of what's important, what needs to be accomplished, and what needs to be let go of. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.